Hey there, Nocturnes! Welcome back to English Me dito sa Nocturnal Sage, a guide for those left in the dark. Ako nga pala ulit si Kuya N, ang inyong class president. Noong nakaraang meeting with Sir Jeremy, diniscuss natin ang tungkol sa deconstruction. Tama? Deconstruction. Yun yung approach kung saan nililipat natin yung conflict between certain ranks papunta sa isa pang perspective. Hindi yung sa binabaliktad natin yung rango ng dalawang concepts, kundi dinadala lang natin from one perspective to another perspective of analysis, yung criticism. Halimbawa, yung babae at saka lalaki. Kung sa ganitong perspective titingnan, let's say socio-political power, natural sa isang patriarchal society, mas angat yung lalaki sa babae. Pero pagdating naman sa kabilang perspective, kuwari, longevity, kung sino yung mas matagal mabuhay, according to studies yung babae yung mas matagal mabuhay kaysa sa lalaki. So, ibig sabihin, yung sa deconstruction, it's not about making sure na yung babae mas angat sa lalaki o kaya vice versa, yung lalaki pa rin yung mas angat sa babae. Hindi. Walang panalo, walang talo sa deconstruction, kundi paiba-iba lang ng perspective. At kung ano yung nasa harapan mo, yun dapat tanggapin mo na valid na perspective yun para tingnan yung mga bagay-bagay. O speaking of babae at saka lalaki, related doon ang bagong approach na ating aaralin for tonight. Ang tawag sa approach na to ay gender criticism. So samahan nyo na ako sa ating klase with Sir Jeremy ngayon para malaman kung paano natin ma-apply ang gender criticism kapag nagsusulat tayo ng reaction paper about what we read or watch. Oh English me, oh English me, gusto kong matuto ng Ingles pero hindi alam kung paano. Good evening class, welcome back to another session on critical approaches. This time we will talk about a fairly sensitive topic, but it's an equally important approach like the others. Gender criticism. Here, we don't just refer to feminism, which is often discussed by literary scholars, since women, compared to men, are more oppressed since they're deprived of the privileges that the opposite sex enjoys and never has to work hard for. However, we will also cover masculinist and queer or LGBT interests. Basically, gender criticism is the more general term. We can have feminist criticism, masculinist criticism even, though this is very rare since, like what I said, feminine interests are often undermined in a society, as well as queer interests, the gays and lesbians for that matter. Probably asexuals too, though it's not as pronounced as gays and lesbians. But anyway, gender criticism is about analyzing how the roles of men, women, and people of different sexual orientations are changing in a particular society based on how it's represented in a certain narrative, whether it be through literature or media. So the representation matters since depending on how the male, female, or queer is represented, it may have an impact on audience reception, how the viewers would perceive the relationship between, let's say, men and women in the story they are reading or watching. If we focus on that aspect, we are already engaging in gender criticism. To further understand how this criticism works, let's study the famous classic Mulan, the original Mulan, not the sequel nor the live action Mulan, but the first animated movie, which is part of the Disney Renaissance. The first key event worth noticing is Mulan being trained to be a proper Tea Party lady. Tea Party lady is just a label I've improvised because I had to review what Mulan is exactly doing in the matchmaker's house. Later on, upon revisiting, I found out again that she's being arranged for a particular kind of marriage. That's why she's being trained by the matchmaker to act ladylike in a stereotypical way. For example, exhibiting fine movements when pouring tea. However, since it fails, her audition fails for matchmaking, she is kicked out by the matchmaker, and then Mulan reflects on how she fits into society, if she is still fit to be the lady that everyone expects her to be, until she gets the news on the call to arms, which she doesn't want her father to participate due to his age. She steals his armor and then pretends to be a young warrior named Ping, a male warrior at that. She trains well. She fights well, as we see in the story. If you remember, Be a Man, yeah, the soundtrack. She also eventually wins the trust of Captain Shang, the leader of the army. However, after an injury, her identity is disclosed by the attending physician, to which Shang gets disappointed, thus making him reject Mulan. She gets kicked out of the army since she's a woman. After probably about a few days, she goes to the emperor's palace and then warns Shang about the strategy of the Huns, Shan Yu being the captain. Now when Shang rejects her warning, she still nonetheless pursues her plan to stop Shang. And then she even manages to command her close friends to act in accordance with her strategy. And then eventually, Shang gives Mulan another chance when it comes to trust, leading to Shan Yu's defeat. And then after that, first Mulan gets reprimanded by the emperor for what she did. She stole her father's armor, pretended to be a man, but later on, saving China in the end. She receives the Emperor's crest and Shan Yu's sword as a reward for defeating the major enemy. And aside from that, she gets an offer to be the Emperor's secretary. Now, Mulan politely declines that since she feels the need to return to her family. And when she does, at the end, we see her offering the crest and the sword to her father to honor the Fa family. But her father responds by saying that the greatest gift of honor is having Mulan as a daughter. So, given these events, we see the struggles that Mulan faces as a woman. She is forced to conform to the stereotype that she has to be meek and she has to be subservient to her husband, whom she is not able to marry nor meet in that particular part of the installment. But later on in the sequel, if you watch the sequel, she eventually gets married to Shang. Well, you have to watch it if you for you to find out. Considering all these events, do you think that the film is feminist? One could argue that it is, another could argue that it isn't. So to give you an idea as to what answer is the most desirable, consider the interest that Mulan fought for. Not just the outward appearance of pretending to be a guy and then wielding a sword and proving that women are just as capable as men when it comes to hand combat or sword fighting. Look beyond that. Why does Mulan pretend to be a boy in the first place? Is that a feminist interest defeating the Huns? So let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Or if you have joined the private Facebook group, you may also air your answers to this question as well. So I'm looking forward to what you think. This is a debatable topic actually. And whoever answers will also receive spotlights in the next episode. Continue surviving in the dark for the next approach that we will discuss. Oh English me, oh English me, gusto kong matuto ng Ingles pero hindi alam kung paano. Sino ang magtuturo? Gusto kong matuto na talaga. Oh English me. Word of the night. Denigrate. Verb. Ang first three na makakapag-comment sa baba ng meaning at ng kanyang original sentence ay magkakaroon ng special mention sa susunod na episode. Kaya ano pa hinihintay nyo, Nocturners? Mag-comment na kayo sa baba bago mag-Friday para masama sa editing ng inyong posts. Kung nagustuhan ninyo ang episode na ito, pakilike naman dyan sa baba. Tapos kung may mga suggestions kayo or questions, mag-comment na lang din. I-share nyo naman ang video na to. Mas maganda nga yung buong playlist sa mga kakilala nyo na nagtitake ng AYAP sa school nyo na to, kasi alam nyo naman na kanya-kanya ng diskarte kung paano makakakuha ng reliable references. At kasama na dyan ang Nocturnal Sage kung naniniwala kayo. Sali din kayo sa ating private Facebook group, The Nocturne Space, yung link nasa baba. Kung nahihiya kayo mag-comment ng sa loobin nyo sa video na to, kasi naka-public nga, at least sa Nocturne Space, private group yun. So, meron kayong private space para maglabas ng mga, mag-initiate ng mga topics na gusto ninyong pag-usapan natin sa English Me or sa kahit ano pang playlist dito sa Nocturnal Sage. At higit sa lahat, mag-subscribe. Saka itap yung notification bell para hindi kayo mahuli sa mga anumang updates na bago. New episodes every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Ang Nocturnal Sage ay nakatuon sa 4 na larangan. Self-conquest yung una. Pwede ka naming bigyan ng tips sa kung paano i-process yung mga dark emotions mo, kagaya ng anger, contempt, etc. sa parang hindi makakasakit ng ibang mga tao. Pero minus any medical prescription to kasi hindi naman po licensed psychiatrist si Sir Jeremy. Bale, ibang approach ang gagamitin namin. Saka next ay communication. Aside from English Me, pwede rin namin kayong tulungan kung paano mag-develop ng self-confidence kapag magsasalita sa harapan ng maraming mga tao, whether face-to-face or online. Or bukod sa confidence level, pwede ka rin namin tulungan kung paano magsulat ng speech. Yung pwedeng may outline kami ibigay na flexible outline yun. So, pwede mo siyang gamitin sa kahit anong sitwasyon. Mas lalo na sa mga sitwasyon kung saan on the spot, pinagsalita ka. Tapos yung prep time mo 3 minuto lang. Basta depende rin sa mga magiging request ng aming mga minamahal na community. Hindi lang basta subscribers ang tingin namin sa inyo, no? Yung sa mga constantly na nagfa-follow sa amin, community na kayo. Kaya ipakita nyo ang pagmamahal nyo sa Nocturnal Sage through influencing others na kaparehas din ninyo ng mindset at alam ninyo na magbe-benefit din sa channel na to na takilikin yung pinalalabas na content namin dito sa Nocturnal Sage. Leadership. Sa leadership naman, para to sa mga bagong halal na student council president or young professional na bagong promote at gusto malaman ang basics ng paghawak ng mga tao. Paano ka makikipag-usap sa mahirap kausap, yung mga ganun bang mga usapin. At saka yung panghuli ay expansion. Kung naghahanap ka ng self-fulfillment sa iyong karera bilang student or professional, tas hindi sapat yung mataas na grades or yung mataas na kita o sweldo, sa expansion series, pwede ka naming tulungan kung paano malaman yung mga skills na dapat mong i-develop sa iyong sarili para mahanap mo yung activity na magdadala sa iyo ng ganung klaseng self-fulfillment. Kasi ang self-fulfillment, hindi yan nakukuha basta-basta sa kung ano yung binibigay sa iyo ng mundo, kundi ano yung maibibigay mo sa mundo. Maraming mga nagsastruggle doon kasi hindi nila alam kung saan ba talaga sila magaling. At gusto nilang syempre din na maging magaling sa mga bagay na gusto nilang gawin. Kaya expansion,
Tutulungan ka namin kung paano ka unti-unting lalaya sa mga stereotype ng iba na kuwari, ay magaling ka sa ganitong bagay. Let's say, magaling ka sa math, mag-math tutor ka na lang. Hindi lang yun yung, bale, career pathway para sa'yo. Hindi lang din engineering. Pwede magamit mo yung math skills mo sa mga ibang bagay na passionate ka. Nung kuwari, math and, let's say, game development, kuwari lang. Yung mga ganun ba. Salamat sa panonood. Ako muli si Kuya N. Kita-kits sa susunod na episode ng English Me dito sa Nocturnal Sage, a guide for those left in the dark.